All right, so here you have a quantum physicist reacting to a quantum physicist reacting to Majorana 1 quantum chip by Microsoft.
There has been a announcement from Microsoft that they have a quantum chip, Majorana 1, and it's been getting lots of attention in the media and in the quantum community.
Right.
So I wanted to do a reaction video for the perspective of a quantum physicist on this announcement. There was a similar announcement from Google a few months ago of a quantum chip, Willow, which I did a reaction video on. You'll see in this video some similarities and differences between these chips and the nature of these results. So what I'm going to do is take a look at some of the material that Microsoft have put out about this chip. They've collected various links here. So if we read the story, they've announced the world's first quantum chip powered by a topological core that it expects will realize quantum computers in years, not decades. For some background, Microsoft have been taking an approach to quantum computing that is very different from others known as topological quantum computing. They made a bet on this quite a long time ago, I think 20 years maybe, and they've been doing research on this particular area of topological quantum computing since then. It's an approach based on new kind of physics that has been predicted but hasn't been engineered or found experimentally yet. The motivation is that if you build the building blocks of quantum computers, qubits, using this topological approach, these qubits can be much more resilient to noise, so to errors, than the qubits that we can build using other methods. So different approaches to building qubits include using superconductors, trapped ions, neutral atoms, spins of electrons, photons, and more. But this topological quantum computing approach is like a completely different idea to create these qubits that are intrinsically protected from errors based on this new type of physics. And so there's a strong motivation to want to build a quantum computer from these types of qubits that are topological and intrinsically protected against errors, because then if you want to build an accurate quantum computer that doesn't have errors, then it should be much easier than using other methods. And in the long run, what you want to do is a process called quantum error correction, spreading out your information that's stored in a qubit across lots of physical qubits, and using those extra qubits to make your quantum computer resilient to noise. The previous reaction video I made to Google's Willow chip focused on this quantum error correction area, because what they've done is using a particular approach to quantum error correction, where you encode this information across lots of qubits using it's called the surface code. It's a particular way of encoding that information and spreading it out across lots of qubits. What they showed was that they could use lots of physical qubits to implement this quantum error correction in such a way that they have one logical qubit, so you're working with one qubit of quantum information, but it's protected because it's within this error correcting code. The kind of main novelty of
I mean, so from what I can tell, it does use some ancillars. So it does use extra ancillar error correction qubits. But the main advantage of Willow is that the more qubits you have in overall, the lower your error rate is for the same architecture. So it's just a sort of I guess an elegant way to try to scale up to hundreds of millions of qubits, and with hundreds of millions or billions of qubits, it should be additive. But from what I could tell, it wasn't clear that what Google did was scalable to hundreds of billions of qubits. So there's a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns. It's still very early on. It might be helpful, it might not. It wasn't a massive difference. In Google's Willow, it was sort of just a very subtle difference in error correction that you saw. And the assumption was that if you then scale up by magnitudes, then the effect on quantum error correction would also scale up by magnitudes. But firstly, it wasn't clear that the math showed that. And secondly, it's not clear if physics will play out that way, or if there'll be some other limit that gets thrown in. So
that recent development wasn't showing that this quantum error correction process can work. So comparing that to, say, topological quantum computing, the difference is that
speeding her up
these topological
because
qubits that Microsoft are focusing on,
it's too
the
slow.
idea is that the intrinsic errors of these qubits are far lower than in other platforms because they're protected by this new kind of physics. So you need to do much less work to protect them from errors. So instead of needing loads of physical qubits to encode your
the Majorana,
information,
it's
you should be able to do that with fewer resources. That should make it easier to scale and realize quantum computing sooner. Now you might be wondering, why is topological quantum computing more widespread? The reason is that because this type of matter needed for these protected qubits hasn't been implemented, hasn't been tested, it's a high-risk approach because no one's actually...
I mean, essentially, the qubit it's called topological because it's in the topology. So it's spread across, from what I can tell, it's spread across multiple particles, or it's in a macro system, but it's in the topology of the macro system. So in some ways, you could maybe argue that superconducting qubits maybe are in some ways some sort of topological qubits, or one special form of that. But what they're essentially talking about is a very clear-cut, it's in topology, and we haven't really seen, a qubit in like a topological qubit before. So that part is kind of interesting. Let's see.
You built the qubit before, unlike other modalities where we have a good...
And for me personally, the topology, the appeal for that is that if you look in nature, it seems that you see quantum effects in biology, and the way that nature kind of gets around decoherence and stuff like that is by nestling the quantum feature or the quantum process within very strong like patterns, physical patterns of one form or the other. This is just something that occurs to me. So topology is one way you could do that as well.
Robust and tested knowledge of how the qubits are actually physically built. Microsoft took this kind of high-risk, high-reward approach to look at topological quantum computing.
Right. Well, it's not really high-risk, high-reward.
When they...
they didn't really take any risk over here. They could easily catch up or buy anything anyone else is doing. So it's just sort of an interesting avenue.
Made this announcement that they have a chip that actually realizes topological quantum computing. This made a big impression in the community because if it really works, then that is really cool and a big breakthrough coming from that bet that they took on this kind of more untested approach to quantum computing. So let's see what they actually say about it. A lot of this blog is about quantum computing in general and the way it can be used. They mentioned the idea that it's reliable by design, incorporating error resistance at the hardware level. So that's referring to the idea of using this exotic physics to protect these qubits intrinsically from errors. It was indeed a high-risk, high-reward challenge that they committed 2 years ago. The company placed 8 topological qubits on a chip designed to scale to 1 million. So they're saying that they've put 8 of these...
Has placed 8 topological qubits on a chip designed to scale to 1 million. Okay.
Qubits on this chip. And these exotic particles, which are known as Majoranas, that's why they called it the Majorana chip, have not been seen or made. They don't exist naturally in nature. We have to engineer them into existence. And so here we're on to the interesting part about what they're actually claiming. So what they say is that until recently, these haven't been seen or made. And they say that the Nature paper, so this is a paper that Microsoft released alongside this announcement of the chip, is a paper that was published in the journal Nature. It marks peer-reviewed confirmation that Microsoft has not only been able to create Majorana particles, which help protect quantum information from random disturbance, but can also reliably measure that information from them using microwaves. This set...
But also can reliably... The Nature paper... I don't know. I'll have to read the Nature paper for the details, but their press release was very slim on actual data.
Action has caused a lot of suspicion in the quantum community, and it doesn't really match up with what is said in the paper and also what's said in the reviewer reports for the paper. So does this paper really confirm that they've been able to create Majorana particles? We can also look at this as all quantum blog, see if it says anything different, and we do have something slightly different here where they've said research published today in Nature along with data shared at the Station Q meeting demonstrate the ability to harness this new type of material and engineer a different type of qubit. So this...
yeah, it kind of smells to me that they're just doing this in order to convince the CEO or the higher levels of Microsoft to continue funding the project, so...
Combination is going to be interesting as we look further into this. Okay, let's look at the paper. So there's this fundamental...
I mean, and then for me, from a personal point of view, it's kind of sad that this is the status of affairs in the US because on the one hand, you see a lot of people doing this because high-tech innovation in the US has sort of been offshore to China, so you don't have that much happening in the US. It sort of feels like a shrinking pot. And so you have a lot, it opens the door for a lot of skeevy behavior and a lot of hype, like people who overhype stuff. Like a lot of grifters. It opens the door to a lot of grifting behavior, which you see across the board. It's always been there in corporate America, but it just seems like there's a lot more of it recently. But at the same time, it's kind of sad because it's a sad state of affairs that it's grifting behavior that's sort of being rewarded in the US as opposed to doing hard research, doing the hard work, getting results. So it's mostly just about pump and dump that's been rewarded for the last 10 years. If you look, at the people who've been rewarded for what they've done, a lot of key cases sort of inspire people to become sociopaths and to engage in sociopathic behavior. Whether it's WeWorks, whether it's Theranos, you see a lot of that, and there's a lot of them hidden in corporate America within these groups. So they do these things behind closed doors in order to pretend stuff is happening that's not happening to continue to get paid. And it's a sad state of affairs because the US should be a place where they can honestly say like, hey, look, it's going to take many years to do this. Let's put the money down. We need to attract the best people. We need to attract researchers with a proven track record. That's, it happens, unfortunately, all too rarely in the US, it feels.
Tool operation needed for this topological quantum computing to work, and they do these experiments to show some outcomes of some measurements. It says these measurements do not by themselves determine whether the low energy states detected by interferometry are topological. So what this is saying is that their results don't conclusively show they have a topological qubit. It's consistent with it, but there's other explanations for it as well, using conventional physics. The findings represent progress towards realization of a topological qubit based on measurement-only operations, but they're not actually showing that they have a topological qubit. They show something that's important for topological quantum computing, but not something that show that they have achieved topological quantum computing. And we can get more insight by having a look at the peer review reports. So it's quite cool that we have a actual file with the peer review reports. So this is the scientists that were sent the paper for comments to decide whether to accept it to the journal or not. And there's a comment at the beginning from the editors. The editorial team wants to point out the results of this manuscript do not represent evidence for the presence of Majorana zero modes in the reported devices. The editors and reviewers emphasize that this paper doesn't show evidence of these topological qubits.
Right.
That's what these Majorana zero modes are. So it shows results that are consistent with being explained by these Majorana zero modes, but it's not the only way to explain them. So what have Microsoft actually shown then? In the blog, they're claiming they have got 8 topological qubits. They haven't demonstrated these qubits from that paper. But in this blog, they have said that the topological qubit is validated by this research published in Nature, along with data shared at the Station Q meeting. It seems that the claim of having actually demonstrated the qubit is in this bit, the data shared at the Station Q meeting, not in the peer-reviewed paper, unlike what it says in that blog, the other one. Okay, so I don't know much about this.
Well, maybe not. I mean, Station Q, what is that? Is it behind doors? You could say anything you want, so...
Meeting, but the impression I have from what I've seen about it is that they shared data showing they have a topological qubit. If this was a different field or a different context, then maybe that sharing it itself would be cause for kind of big excitement about this.
I mean, let's be honest, if they had the data, they would include it in the publication. So on the other hand, if you can get 2 Nature publications, why not? But the fact that Nature published it without demonstrating, without showing like a Majorana qubit is, to be perfectly honest, highly suspicious. Why was it a Nature paper? Like, why was it Nature is very suspicious.
Result having been demonstrated. But let me give context on demonstrations of topological quantum computing from the past. A few years ago, there were a few different Nature papers published about topological quantum computing, claiming to have experimental evidence of these topological qubits. But later it turned out that these papers weren't satisfactory evidence of topological qubits, and they got retracted. So given that history, that makes the community kind of suspicious of results announcing the demonstration of topological qubits without a thorough peer review process. Now the part that has been peer reviewed is this paper, which says that it's not demonstrated Majorana zero modes. And this data shared at the meeting has not yet been published and put under the process of peer review. So I think that for the community to be convinced that this exotic type of qubit really has been created, we'll probably have to wait till this data gets actually published and peer reviewed and put under some scrutiny to understand whether it really is evidence of a topological qubit, or if other explanations for the experimental results need to be taken seriously alongside the proposed explanation that it's an actual topological qubit. It would be really great if this actually all checks out and they have actually created a topological qubit on this chip, but there's some reason to be skeptical until we...
So she's being very PC. She wants to leave the door open to being hired by Microsoft, but being honest, this is a BS result.
Have the full peer review data given the history with topological qubits.
I mean, again, it's one of those results like with Google. It's like, Elon Musk can just sort of started the whole process of overselling shit, and Google seemed to just get on board with that, especially the quantum group, and just and then from there it just seems like everyone's like, hey, this pump and dump is working, let's just hype and just take the money and run. It's people are getting away with it. So why should we sit down and do hard research and get hard results when you can just do pump and dump and run away? So it's a little sad to see, but
okay, but let's say that it actually,
like, for me, it's just, I could play nice. I made this decision a while ago. I could play nice. I could, be PC and everything and just, get a job and fit in and blah, blah, blah. But essentially, you would be building your house on not just a poor foundation, but you'd be building your house on a foundation of sand. And you'd spend the rest of your life trying to fix it this way and that, because there's no way a civilization can stand if this is the sort of sketchy research, and the way that research funding is happening right now, it's all kind of sketchy. So in a society where truth sort of retreats to the dark corners, that society doesn't really last very long. And then when you need to move, if the society revives, or you need to move to another society that is taking care of its sciences, they're very particular about a track record of you showing that you actually suffered, were willing to suffer in order to maintain the truth. And they're very leery of, because once you've sort of had a track record of a sociopath, it's something inside you that sort of tends to creep up, you know what I mean? And so they just don't want to keep looking over their shoulders. So for me, it's just, short-term pain, hopefully for some long-term rewards. So anyway.
It all checks out, and it really works, and it's actually a topological qubit that's been created on this chip. What does that mean for the field of quantum computing? It would be really exciting having this new type of qubit and to have this kind of completely different type of underlying physics where it's intrinsically resilient to noise, which could lead to needing far fewer resources to do the error correction needed to get accurate computations. The challenge would then be...
But yeah, I mean, the challenge, I guess, is that one, a topological qubit is isolated from the environment, which means it's very robust against errors, but conversely, it's really hard to read in, read out, and to perform a gate on these qubits.
To scale that up. So if they've demonstrated that you can control one of these topological qubits, then there's the task of showing that you can do operations on multiple versions of these qubits and scale that up to more and more of these and control a lot of these topological qubits. And in that scenario, they're kind of at a stage that a lot of the other qubit hardware systems were a while ago, when they were first being developed with one qubit, trying to do an operation on one, adding in a second one, trying to do an operation on the second. So there's some catching up with this approach, but if the resilience to noise that's promised by this new kind of physics holds up in these devices, then that'll be a really exciting pathway to scale. And I think everyone in the quantum and physics community wants it to be true. Having topological qubits would be really cool to build quantum computers based on great physics and properties of these qubits. Hopefully this bet that Microsoft have taken on this exotic type of quantum computing pays off. To recap, Microsoft
really
have
wants
this chip using
to get hired or to get
qubits approach to
Microsoft
topological
money.
computing, where the qubits should be extra resilient to noise, which should make it much easier to scale to more qubits with low noise sooner. The actual paper they put out to validate this does not show evidence of these topological qubits. It shows something consistent with them, and it's something that would be needed to control these qubits, but it's not demonstrating that these qubits exist, because it can also be shown using conventional physics. And they have mentioned that they shared data in this meeting, but until those results are peer-reviewed and put under scrutiny, it's hard to be convinced by them, especially given the history of Majorana qubits, where there have been experimental demonstrations of them claimed in the past that have been later retracted. So we have to be very careful in considering what other explanations there are for the outcomes of these experiments. But it's a very exciting area. It's cool that there could be some really great progress here, and I look forward to keeping up with what's happening and hopefully updating you when I have a better idea of what's...
Okay, so there was a lot of fluff, a lot of repetition. I'm glad I fast forwarded through it. There really wasn't much in this. It could have been like a 1-minute video, so... Oh well,